We are on the threshold of a new revolution that will change mental health care forever. We've learned that most psychiatric illnesses are not mental health issues at all. They are brain health issues that steal your mind. What if mental health was really brain health? This one idea changes everything. Get your brain right and your mind will follow. In this program, I'm going to give you the 6 practical steps that you can use immediately to change your brain to heal your mind. Today, I'm going to share with you information from my new book, The End of Mental Illness, how neuroscience is transforming psychiatry and helping to prevent or reverse anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, ADHD, addictions, PTSD, psychosis, and more. After sitting on the other side of the psychiatrist's couch for the last 40 years, I've come to realize that mental illness affects us all. Either you've personally struggled with one or you love someone who has. No one escapes. And the incidence of these problems is skyrocketing, with Alzheimer's disease expected to triple and the deaths from drugs, alcohol, and suicide at their highest levels in recorded history, despite the escalating use of psychiatric medications. Yet, we are on the threshold of a new revolution that will change mental health care forever. Based on our brain imaging work at Amen Clinics, with over 160,000 scans on patients from 120 countries, we've learned that most psychiatric illnesses are not mental health issues at all, but rather they are brain health issues that steal your mind. This one idea changes everything. Get your brain right and your mind will follow. This is one of the most exciting breakthroughs in medicine, because with a better brain always comes a better life. Your brain can have problems just like your heart can have problems. Yet most people who see cardiologists have never had a heart attack. They are there to prevent them. To end mental illness, which is our mission at Amen Clinics, we must develop a similar way of thinking where we know your brain's risk factors and attack each of them as soon as possible. For example, did you know that teenagers who sleep just 1 less hour than their peers have overall lower blood flow to their brains and a higher incidence of depression and suicide? You must make sleep a priority, and light therapy can help. If you have gut problems, it can affect your brain and make you more likely to suffer with anxiety, insomnia, and brain fog. Probiotics can help you think and feel better. Did you know that Lyme disease can infect your brain and cause people to become angry, depressed, even psychotic? If your mind is not right, it's critical to check for and treat infections. This program is dedicated to my 2 nieces, Alize and Amelie. They were born into a family genetically loaded for trouble, with multiple suicides, schizophrenia, drug abuse, anxiety, and depression. But genes only load the gun. It's what happens to you that pulls the trigger. Unfortunately, they were also raised in chaos, with parents who struggled with addictions, domestic violence, and depression. When anyone in a family suffers, everyone suffers. The girls went to many different schools, and life was unpredictable, to say the least. Then about 4 years ago, the girls still remember the terror they felt when they were taken by Child Protective Services and placed into foster care, where yet more traumas occurred. At the time, my wife, Tana, was estranged from her sister, Tamara, the girl's mother. But when we found out the children were taken, we knew we must act. We wrapped services around Tamara, help her break her addiction, And on Mother's Day 2017, she got the kids back. When you combine genetic vulnerability with traumatic experience, Alizé and Amelie are at an extremely high risk for mental illness. The end of mental illness is our blueprint to end mental illness in them and in their children and grandchildren. Using this program, Tamara, Alizé, and Amelie have thrived. Tamara is sober and working full-time at a job she loves. And the girls are both happy, A students, social, no longer addicted to hot Cheetos. Our first grocery trip together was not that much fun for any of us, as we told the girls we don't spend money on food that could hurt them. Plus, we are putting their brains and their bodies in a healing environment which will affect generations to come. In this program, I'm going to give you the 6 practical steps we gave Tamara and the girls that you can use immediately to help you and your loved ones feel happier, sharper, and more in control of your own destiny. I'm also going to introduce you to a new concept I developed called the good versus evil ruler. If I was a good ruler, what strategies would I use to end mental illness in our society? If I was an evil ruler, how would I create them? If we know how mental illnesses are created, we can develop strategies to prevent them. Pay attention to how many evil ruler strategies you recognize, because that's where we'll learn what is really causing the epidemic rise in ADHD, suicide, anxiety, and depression. For example, if I was an evil ruler, I'd create addictive social media apps that make everyone else's life look amazing, making you feel inadequate. The more time you spend on these apps, the more likely you are to be anxious, depressed, and overweight. If I was a good ruler, and here the symbol will be my wife Tana as a superhero, because mothers are the health leaders and superheroes in our families. If I was a good ruler, I'd create a nationwide brain health program and teach it in schools, churches, businesses, anywhere people gather. The end of mental illness begins with brain health. Step number 1, eliminate the term mental illness and call these issues what they really are: brain health issues that steal your mind. The term mental illness insidiously stains everyone diagnosed, making them less likely to seek help. You may be one of them. No one is shamed for cancer, diabetes, or heart disease. Likewise, no one should be shamed for bipolar disorder, depression, panic disorders, PTSD, and schizophrenia. Yet, if we do not lower the stigma for these disorders, many more people will suffer and die. Every 14 minutes in this country, someone commits suicide. It is the second leading cause of death among young people and has increased 33% since 1999, while cancer has declined 27%. Why? We are working on the wrong paradigm. Mental illness places the emphasis on your psyche or your mind, which is vague and hard to define, when our brain imaging work has clearly shown these are brain health issues that steal your mind. Meet Jared. He was diagnosed with ADHD in preschool. He was hyperactive, restless, impulsive, and couldn't focus. He had no friends, and his 3rd grade teacher said he would never do well in school and told his parents to lower their expectations. He had a terrible temper, punched holes in walls, and was not invited to the parties of his classmates. He had seen 5 doctors and was prescribed 5 different stimulant medications for ADHD, but they all made him worse, triggering mood swings and rages. His behavior had gotten so bad that his last doctor wanted to put him on an antipsychotic medication, which I think is a last resort unless someone is truly psychotic. This is when his mother brought him to see us. Jared desperately wanted friends, and his mother wanted him to have a normal life. We decided to look at his brain with an imaging study called SPECT, which is a nuclear medicine study that looks at blood flow and activity. SPECT is different from CAT scans or MRI, which show the brain's structure. SPECT looks at how the brain functions and basically tells us three things about every area of the brain. Is it healthy, underactive, or overactive? The image on the left looks at the outside surface of the brain. A healthy scan shows full, even, symmetrical activity. In the image on the right, red shows the most active areas, which in a healthy scan is typically in the back bottom part of the brain. The outside surface of Jared's scan was healthy, but the inside showed dramatic hyperactivity in a pattern we call the ring of fire. No wonder stimulants didn't work. It was like pouring gasoline on a fire. On a group of natural supplements to calm his brain, which we'll discuss, together with parent training and brain-healthy habits, in just a few months, Jared's behavior improved, the rages stopped, and he was able to make friends. He's now been on the honor roll or dean's list for 8 straight years. And he wants to be a firefighter. When I asked him why, he said, on someone's worst day, I want to make it better. Balancing his brain literally changed the trajectory of the rest of his life in a very positive way. In the end of mental illness, I give a brief history of mental health treatment throughout the ages. How would Jared have been treated in the past? In ancient civilization, religious leaders may have drilled a hole in his skull to release the evil spirits. Ouch. In 400 BC, Hippocrates would have had Jared exercise, listen to music, and focus on a job that fit his restless nature. I like that. But he also may have bled him to release the excessive fluids. I don't like that. In the Middle Ages, physicians may have locked Jared in an asylum where he would have been chained and beaten. In the 18th and 19th centuries, Jared may have been sterilized, if not killed, and his family placed under suspicion in the eugenics program, which was the precursor to Nazi atrocities. In the early 20th century, Freud may have had Jared lie on his couch 5 times a week to help him work out his internal conflicts and probably talk about his relationship with his mother. Why are mothers always blamed for everything? I'm a huge fan of psychotherapy once your brain works right. But doing it with a troubled brain is like doing software programming on a computer that has hardware problems. In the 1950s, Jared may have had a prefrontal lobotomy to calm the aggression that permanently damaged his personality. In the 1960s, he may have been given electroshock therapy. Not the kind of buzz he would like. And in the present, Jared saw many different doctors and had tried many different medications without anyone looking at his brain that only made him worse. Our brain imaging work completely changes the discussion around mental health for me because it directly connects the health of the brain to the health of your mind. Looking back on our history, it makes sense why no one really wants to see a psychiatrist. No one wants to be labeled as defective or abnormal, but everyone wants a better brain. What if mental health was really brain health? Reimagining mental health as brain health changes everything. People see their problems as medical and not moral. It decreases shame and guilt, and increases compliance because people want better brains. And it increases forgiveness and compassion from families as they realize there is more to difficult behavior than just a bad attitude. Step number 2, to end mental illness, you must fall in love with your brain. In 1991, when I first started doing SPECT, I scanned everyone I knew, including my 60-year-old mother, who had a stunningly beautiful brain, which reflected her life. I also scanned myself, but it was not healthy because I played football and had many bad brain habits. Seeing my mom's brain and then my own, I developed brain envy because I wanted her brain. Freud was wrong about the envy that causes emotional problems. He was about 3 feet too low. 25 years later, doing our program, my brain is younger and healthier, which is usually not what happens with age. The scans taught me that if I wanted to love my life, I had to start by loving my brain. Doug suffered from brain fog and fatigue. He had lived in a mold-filled home, grew up on a farm where he was exposed to a ton of pesticides, and had many concussions from martial arts. Here is a healthy scan compared to Doug's scan. He told me that seeing his scan was like seeing one of his children for the first time. He knew he had to take care of it and would never do anything to hurt it. Here is his scan after 3 months on our program. The brain fog lifted, and his brain was better, as was his energy, endurance, mood, and memory, which is the most exciting lesson of our work. Once you fall in love with your brain, it can be better. I recently spoke to an addiction recovery group. Before my talk, there was a chip ceremony where people got chips depending on their length of sobriety. Based on our work with Tamara and thousands of other addicts, we know when you're initially trying to get sober, your brain looks and feels terrible. But over time, if you love your brain and stay away from things that hurt it, it can heal. Here is a patient beginning treatment after 4 months and a year sober. You are not stuck with the brain you have. You can make it better even if you've been bad to it. Neuroplasticity is possible for you and starts by falling in love with your brain. This is a picture of Tamara and the girls the night Tamara got her 1-year sobriety chip. I am so proud of her. When we come back, we're going to talk about the third step to ending mental illness. If you want to keep your brain healthy or rescue it if it's headed for trouble, you must prevent or treat the 11 major risk factors that steal your mind. And none of this is hard. For example, you'll learn that bright light therapy alone has been found to increase your mood, energy, focus, and sleep. Stay with me. The end of mental illness begins with brain health. Depression is not a Prozac deficiency. It's a sign your brain is in trouble. Today I'm giving you 6 steps to end mental illness. We've already talked about step number 1, stop using the term mental illness and call these issues what they really are, brain health issues that steal your mind. And step 2, fall in love with your brain. Here's step 3. If you want to keep your brain healthy or rescue it if it's headed for trouble, you must prevent or treat the 11 major risk factors that steal your mind. And the good news is that almost all of them are preventable or treatable, And when you get serious about taking care of your brain, every other part of you becomes healthier too. Recently, my wife Tana and I taught an online course at Amen University called The Brain Warrior's Way, where over 20,000 people signed up the first week. Over the first 6 months as a group, our students reported better energy, mood, focus, memory, and sleep, plus reductions in stress, pain symptoms, and weight. Get your brain right, and your mind and body will be better. At Amen Clinics, we developed the mnemonic Bright Minds to help you remember the 11 risk factors. There's much more information about these in the program materials, but for now, I'll give you a brief overview, how to know which ones you have, and some simple things to do about them. You are going to want to take notes. Let's get started. The B in Bright Minds is for blood flow. Low blood flow is the #1 brain imaging predictor of Alzheimer's disease and is also associated with depression, ADHD, and schizophrenia. When I first scanned my niece Alize, it showed lower overall blood flow, which is very concerning given her age. But seeing it gave her incentive to really care about her brain, and on supplements, medication, and a healthier diet, over 6 months her brain was healthier and she felt better and excelled in school. In fact, she won multiple academic awards and was her 8th grade graduation speaker. Research shows that brain cells don't age, but rather it's your blood vessels that age, and anything that damages blood flow damages your mind. So how do you keep your blood vessels healthy? Exercise is critical to maintaining healthy blood flow. It's the universal psychiatric treatment. Hippocrates was right. Head-to-head against antidepressants, exercise has been shown to be equally effective. Limit caffeine and nicotine as they both lower blood flow. Keep your blood pressure healthy. As blood pressure goes up, blood flow to your brain goes down. Plus, protect your heart, as any form of heart disease can damage your brain. If I was an evil ruler and wanted to damage your blood flow, I would create a culture where people have to have caffeine in the morning and throughout the day to feel alert, and alcohol at night to come down, both lower blood flow. If I was a good ruler, I would limit video games and screen time so people would spend more time outdoors in the sunshine exercising. Did you know that bright light therapy has been shown to increase blood flow to the brain and help with mood, focus, energy, and even sleep in just 30 minutes a day? The R in Bright Minds is for retirement and aging. Our research clearly demonstrates that your brain becomes less and less active with age. I hate that. But if you work to keep your brain healthy, you can slow or even reverse the aging process. But the older you get, the more serious you need to be about taking care of your brain. Because when you stop learning, your brain starts dying. Mental exercise is as important to your brain as physical exercise. The first I in Bright Minds is for inflammation, which comes from the Latin word to set a fire. When you have chronic inflammation in your body, it's like you have a low-level fire destroying your organs. You may know that inflammation is associated with cancer and arthritis, but did you know that it is also linked to autism, depression, and dementia? There are a number of important and surprising causes of chronic inflammation that you can control, such as a diet high in sugar and processed foods. The standard American diet is killing us, making us fatter and more inflamed than ever. Get your food right, and your mind will follow. Gum disease is a major cause of inflammation. You must floss and take care of your teeth. Low levels of omega-3 fatty acids are another common cause of inflammation that affects 97% of the population. No wonder we have an epidemic of brain health issues. Taking omega-3s have been found to help with mood, focus, memory, and your weight. Gut problems are also a major cause of chronic inflammation. Hey, I thought we were talking about the brain. What do the gut and brain have to do with each other? Like everything. Pop quiz. Where 3/4 of your neurotransmitters made? In your gut, which is also called the second brain, because it is loaded with nervous tissue, which is why you get butterflies when you're excited and loose stools when you're anxious or stressed. Taking care of your gut is critical to lowering inflammation and why probiotics have been shown to help your brain. If I was an evil ruler and wanted to increase inflammation, I'd put fast food restaurants everywhere. In a fascinating study, researchers looked at 2 outer islands from Australia. One had fast food restaurants, the other did not. The population with fast food restaurants had significantly lower levels of omega-3 fatty acids and 5 times the level of depression. In the program materials, Tana has more than 200 brain-healthy recipes to help you change your brain to heal your mind. Plus, notice these look amazing. There is no suffering in getting well. The G in Bright Minds is for genetics. Brain health and mental health issues run in families, the same way heart disease does. Which issues run in your family? But unlike what most people think, genetic risk is not a death sentence, as in the case of Alizé anomaly. Rather, it should be a wake-up call to get serious about your risk factors as soon as possible. You might know my friend Lisa Gibbons. Her mother and grandmother died with Alzheimer's disease. When she was 51, she came to see us because of severe stress. Her SPECT scan showed very low overall activity, which was consistent with depression and the potential of Alzheimer's in her future. SPECT can tell years before people have any symptoms if they're likely to get dementia. But Lisa did everything I asked, and 10 years later, her brain is dramatically healthier. Would you like a better brain a year from now? 5 years from now? How about 10 years from now? Know all of your risk factors, including the genetic ones, and be serious about prevention as soon as possible. Plus, think about screening your brain. When I turned 50, my doctor wanted me to have a colonoscopy. I asked him why I didn't want to look at my brain. Wasn't the other end just as important? As a society, we screen hearts, bones, breasts, and prostate glands, but very few people ever look at their brains. In the future, that will change. The H in Bright Minds is for head trauma. Mild traumatic brain injuries are a major cause of mental health issues, and few psychiatrists know about it because they rarely look at the brain. Your brain is soft, about the consistency of soft butter, and your skull is really hard with multiple sharp bony ridges. Head injuries, even ones that occurred decades earlier, are a major cause of depression, addictions, and memory problems. Meet my friend, Gary Busey, the Oscar-nominated actor who had a serious motorcycle accident in 1988, where he was in a coma and had a near-death experience. His brain showed serious damage, with decreased activity in the front part of his brain, affecting his empathy, judgment, and impulse control, and in his temporal lobe, so he had trouble reading social cues. This gave him problems in his marriage and work. Gary wanted to save his marriage and keep acting, and by doing the Bright Minds interventions I'm giving you, he's lost 40 pounds, improved his impulse control, and marriage. At the age of 76, he recently appeared in an off-Broadway play as God. It turned out one of the most important parts of Gary's story was scanning his wife, Stephanie. She had struggled with moodiness and irritability, which was only exacerbated by Gary's erratic behavior. It was easy to blame Gary, but our brain imaging work taught me that everyone's brain contributes to the family dynamics. Stephanie's brain showed trouble in her frontal and temporal lobes, likely from being thrown off her bicycle when she was hit by a car at the age of 6. Rehabilitating her brain with supplements, hyperbaric oxygen, and the Bright Mind strategies played a major role in improving their marriage. Get your brain right, and your family will be better. If I was an evil ruler, I'd encourage distracted drivers like the one who hit Stephanie. Stop it. I'd invent evil ruler games, such as Running with the Bulls, where stupidity and death wishes run together to create brain damage. And I'd require older people to get up on ladders to clean out their gutters, as falls are one of the most common causes of brain trauma in the elderly. It's okay to hire young people to do that. If I was a good ruler, I would create coordination and strength training programs for the elderly. They will be less likely to fall, and the stronger you are as you age, the less likely you are to get Alzheimer's disease. The T in Bright Minds is for toxins, one of the most common causes of brain and mental health issues. When I first started performing SPECT scans, I noticed a toxic pattern on the brains of substance abusers. But the scans also taught me that there are many other things that damage your brain, such as exposure to mold from water damage, carbon monoxide, common in firefighters. Jared has to be careful to protect his brain. Pesticide and toxic chemical exposure, and even anesthesia, which has shown an increased risk of learning problems in children and dementia in adults. Here is a scan of my assistant Karen before and after general anesthesia to have an aortic aneurysm repaired. She could tell how much it affected her mood and memory. But when we worked to fix the damage, her brain was much better over the next 6 months, as was her memory and focus. Of course, you can't always avoid anesthesia, so we should always be taking care of our brains. One detoxification strategy I really like is taking regular saunas. Research has shown that people who take the most saunas have the lowest risk of Alzheimer's disease. Other researchers have found it to be an effective treatment for depression. The M in Bright Minds stands for mindstorms, which is abnormal electrical activity in the brain that can cause mood instability, irritability, temper problems, anxiety for little or no reason, memory and learning problems, and often headaches triggered by fluorescent lights. This is one of the reasons psychiatrists use anti-seizure medications for patients with bipolar disorder, anger management issues, and migraines. They help to stabilize the brain. Mindstorms often come from the emotional part of the brain in an area called the temporal lobes. A few years ago, I met Tommy, a 9-year-old boy who had read my book, Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. When he first saw me, he said, "Hey, Dr. Amen, I have a left temporal lobe problem." Really, I asked. How do you know that? He said, I read your book. But how do you really know? He said, I have a really bad temper. And you write that people who have bad tempers often have temporal lobe problems. He was right. And then he added, and I used to see ghosts. What? I used to see these green things float in front of my eyes. I thought they were ghosts and they would scare me until I read your book and realized they were illusions that come from misfiring temporal lobes. And then he looked at me with his big, beautiful blue eyes and said, and last year, to get rid of the bad thoughts in my head, I tried to kill myself. Tommy's scan showed a problem in his left temporal lobe as he predicted. A long time ago, I realized not everyone can get a scan. So based on thousands of scans, I developed checklists for you to know about the health of your brain, including which of the 16 brain types you have. For mindstorms, people often respond quickly, like Tommy did, to treatments such as anti-seizure medication, a very low carbohydrate diet, which is not good for everyone. You have to know your brain type, and a treatment called neurofeedback, where we trained his brain to fire more normally. So far, we've talked about the first 7 Bright Minds risk factors. In the program materials, I also talk about immunity and infections, like Lyme disease, which we'll talk more about, neurohormone deficiencies. Thyroid and testosterone must be optimal for your brain to work right. Diabesity, which is a combination of high blood sugar and being overweight. Both of these shrink your brain. And sleep problems, such as insomnia and sleep apnea, which can damage your brain. You must make sleep a priority. When we come back, I'll tell you about a couple who benefited from our program after failing marital therapy, and how critical it is to get the whole family involved in brain health. It's never just about one of us. It's always about all of us. Stay with me. Welcome back. Today I'm giving you a new paradigm to feel happier and have better focus, energy, memory, and even improve your relationships. Dave and Bonnie failed marital therapy. That's right, their therapist gave them an F. How do you fail marital therapy? Well, after spending 3 years and over $25,000 and multiple medications and diagnoses for Dave, including bipolar disorder, ADHD, and a personality disorder, the therapist told them to get divorced. This made the couple upset because they wanted to be married. When they got mad at the therapist, she got nervous and told them that she knew a clinic who takes care of really difficult people and sent them to see us. The husband's SPECT scan looked awful, much like the scans of addicts. But in his history, he said he didn't drink and had never used drugs. Now, what's the first thing we learn in psychiatry school about addicts? They lie. They lie a lot. So in front of his wife, I asked him again if he drank or used drugs. He said, Dr. Amen, I have many problems. That's not it. So I turned to the wife and asked if that was true. And she said, oh, yes, Dr. Amen. He doesn't drink and he's never done drugs. He's just a jerk. As I chuckled at her comment, I wondered why his scan looked so awful. It could be infections, a near drowning episode, very low thyroid, or an environmental toxin. My next question to Dave was, where do you work? He said, I work in a furniture factory, finishing furniture. He was doing drugs. In fact, he was doing the worst drug of abuse, which is inhaling organic solvents. My next question to Bonnie was, so when did he become a jerk? She said, what do you mean? I said, "Did you marry him that way? Do you have daddy issues that you're trying to work out?" "No," she said, "when we first got married, he was great. It wasn't until about 5 years ago that we started having trouble." Then she put her hand over her mouth and said, "Oh my God, that was about the time he started this job. Do you think our problems could be related to his work?" In that moment, Bonnie went from seeing Dave as a jerk and someone her therapist was telling her to divorce to someone who needed help. In his attempt to be a good husband and support his family, he was being poisoned. It was easy to call Dave bad, but the harder question is to ask, why? Psychiatric diagnoses described his behavior, but not the cause, which is why the medications didn't work. How do you know unless you look? The most important intervention was to stop the toxic exposure and put his brain into a healing environment. I put him on our Bright Minds program, and with the right treatment, his behavior got better, as did his scan and their marriage. I wonder how many families are suffering because one of the parents or children has a brain problem that no one is aware of. How do you do marital therapy or family therapy with this brain? It will never work until you change your brain to heal your mind. So far, we've discussed the first 3 steps to end mental illness. Step number 1, stop using the term mental illness and call these issues what they really are: brain health issues that steal your mind. 2, learn to love your brain. It is involved in everything you do and everything you are. And 3, prevent or treat the 11 Bright Minds risk factors. In this part of the program, I'm going to talk about first doing no harm, getting the whole family involved, and starting today. Step number 4, first do no harm. In making recommendations for our patients at Amen Clinics, we always try to keep a number of principles in mind, and you should too whenever you go to the doctor, such as first do no harm. Use the least toxic, most effective treatments. Don't start something you'll have a hard time stopping just to deal with the anxiety of the moment. Many people are prescribed anti-anxiety or antidepressant medication in short office visits, and doctors rarely tell you they may be very hard to stop. Medication should never be the only thing you do, and always think skills, not just pills. Let me be very clear. If I'm dealing with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or severe depression, I usually start with medication to stabilize the situation while I'm trying to figure out what may have caused it. But I am always trying to support my patient's nutrition to be able to lower any medications that may be needed. Did you know that as a population, Americans are deficient in magnesium, choline, omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin C, D, and E, and potassium? All of these are vital for your brain and cognitive performance. Also, deficiencies in iron can make you anxious and unfocused, but you shouldn't just take iron. It needs to be measured in your blood so you know if you need more or less. Too much iron is associated with heart disease and premature aging. Unfortunately, most doctors are not trained in using natural supplements, so they usually start with medications for anxiety, depression, and ADHD, but there is good scientific evidence for magnesium, GABA, and theanine to calm anxiety, green tea, zinc, and rhodiola for focus, saffron, SAMe, curcumins, and omega-3 fatty acids for depression, and ginkgo, phosphatidylserine, and huperzine A for memory. In the program materials, I give you our method for dealing with many different brain health issues, including mood swings, psychosis, temper problems, memory loss, addictions, insomnia, and ADHD. But for now, let me just show you 6 things you can do today to lower anxiety before starting medications. 1, check for low blood sugar, anemia, and high thyroid, as these can cause anxiety. 2, meditation and hypnosis can be powerful to lower anxiety. 3, slow, deep breathing. 3 seconds in and twice as long to breathe out. Do this 10 times to trigger an immediate relaxation response. 4, do calming exercises such as Tai Chi, which can also make your brain bigger and help your memory. 5, learn to kill the ants, or the automatic negative thoughts that steal your happiness. You do not have to believe every stupid thought you have. 6, try nutritional supplements like magnesium, GABA, and theanine before resorting to anti-anxiety medications that can be both addictive and toxic to your brain. All of these strategies have research showing they may help you, and none of them will ever hurt you. We cannot say that about any medication. Adriana was a healthy, smart 16-year-old when she went on a mountain vacation with her family. When they arrived at their cabin, they were surrounded by 6 deer, which they thought was a magical moment. But 10 days later, Adriana became agitated and started hallucinating. She was admitted to a psychiatric hospital and prescribed different antipsychotic medications, which didn't help. The next 3 months were a painful road of different doctors and medications at a cost of nearly $100,000. Adriana had become a shadow of herself, and a doctor at Stanford told her mother, Deb, that her daughter had schizophrenia and would need to be on medication for the rest of her life, and as her mother, she just needed to accept it. But Deb was unwilling to accept that and brought her to see us. Her SPECT scan showed areas of unusually high activity, which caused us to look for other causes of her symptoms, such as an infection. It turned out Adriana had Lyme disease, a bacterial infection caused by deer ticks. On antibiotics, she got her life back and recently got her master's degree from the University of London. Look at these maps, which show the highest incidence of schizophrenia on the top and Lyme disease on the bottom. They're nearly identical. Anyone with schizophrenia in these areas should consider Lyme testing. Every day about noon for the last 6 years, I get a text from Adriana's mother asking how she can pray for me. First, do no harm. If I was an evil ruler, I'd make diagnoses that could affect the rest of your life, such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, just based on symptoms without any biological information. I'd ignore natural ways to heal the brain and use powerful medications as first-line treatments against mood, anxiety, and attentional problems. And I'd have insurance companies deny care for prevention and only spend money when people are sick. Did you know that 75% of our healthcare dollars are spent on chronic, preventable illnesses? We must do better because our children and grandchildren will never be able to afford the tsunami of illness headed their way. Step number 5, get the whole family involved. Brain health issues do not just affect the person who suffers. It affects everyone around them and nearly 1 million families break apart every year under the stress. When we first met Amelie, she was only 6 years old. She was anxious, withdrawn, behind in school, and had armies of ants, automatic negative thoughts, attacking her every day. Whenever she was upset, she could never speak up and bottled the stress which made her sick. But with help, learning to love her brain, express herself, and kill the ants, she now excels in school, is reading 3 grades above her level, and is much more assertive. Her future is much brighter, but we can never stop being vigilant to protect her from the toxic combination of genetic vulnerability mixed with traumatic experience that typically triggers mental health issues. When I first started scanning people, I realized that I needed to be concerned about all the brains in the family. Family dynamics are never based on just one brain. Amelie and Alizé were totally impacted by the brain dysfunction of their parents. Tamara was also impacted by the brain health of her mom and dad. If you spend time with parents who've been traumatized and are depressed, anxious, or abusing drugs, the stress can reshape your brain to make you more vulnerable to depression and substance abuse. If you spend time with people who have a lot of ants, your ants will mate with their ants, and you'll create mutant ants that will infest your relationship with negativity. Here are 5 simple ways to support everyone in the family. 1, encourage communication. People cannot read your mind. They don't know what you're going through unless you tell them. 2, use magic phrases to open communication, such as, "I'm concerned about you," "I'm here for you," "Can we talk about how you're feeling?" "Can I go with you to get help?" 3, tell people that asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. Imagine if a business was in trouble and the owners ignored the problems. They'd go bankrupt. The same thing happens when you ignore brain health issues. Your family will go bankrupt. 4, tough love works for people whose brains work right. But for people with troubled brains, tough love is like doing software programming on people with hardware problems, which is not very effective. 5, when a person has a setback, it's hard on everyone, no question. But it is better to be curious about what happened rather than furious and judgmental. As we've seen today, behavior is much more complicated than most people think. I also want to be clear that this program is not just for vulnerable people, it's for all of us. If you don't take care of your brain, you risk losing your mind. But the good news is that you are not stuck with the brain you have. You can make it better, as we've seen with Alizé and Amelie, Jarrett, Gary, Stephanie, Lisa, Bonnie, Dave, Adriana, and thousands of others. You can do this. None of it is hard. It just takes motivation, focus, and the right plan. Step number 6, start today. I was invited to the White House to discuss prison reform, the opiate epidemic, and mental illness in America. The same way our society can work against us to create mental illness, we can also work together to end it. My recommendation was to create a nationwide brain health campaign taught in schools, prisons, churches, on public television, and at work, anywhere people gather. Our research shows if you get healthy as a group, family, friends, or coworkers, it doubles your chances for success. Plus, the really great news, when you focus on brain health, you not only decrease your risk of anxiety, depression, Alzheimer's disease, and addiction, but you also become a better friend, a better son, a better mother, and a better grandfather. I was named after my grandfather, and he was my best friend growing up. He was a candy maker, and one of my earliest memories was standing at his stove making fudge. He was one of the happiest people I've ever met, even being married to my grandmother, which could be pretty stressful. But all of that changed after he had a heart attack. He was sad, cried easily, and couldn't sleep. He was diagnosed with depression and put on medication. It was such a dramatic change. I was in medical school at the time and learned firsthand about the connection between heart disease and depression. Did you know that 60% of people who have a heart attack will develop depression within 18 months? His funeral was one of the saddest days of my life. The joy I felt from his love and the sadness I felt from losing him caused me to constantly ask myself two important questions over the last 40 years. One, how can I love other people like he loved me? Isn't that really what life's about? Being loving, connected, useful, and helpful? And two, how can I take better care of my brain so I can love my family, be independent, and do the work I love for as long as possible? In the program materials, I give you all the tools you need, step by step, to have a better brain and a better mind for as long as possible. Pass this information on. Our society is going the wrong way, and the evil ruler is winning, with the deaths from drugs, alcohol, and suicide at their highest levels in recorded history. We cannot wait for the good ruler to save us. Rather, you need to become the good ruler of your life. You need to become the superhero and put on the cape to take control of your destiny and the destinies of those you love. Our mission at Amen Clinics is to end mental illness by creating a revolution in brain health. But it has to start with all of us today, not tomorrow, which is something you've been telling yourself for decades. Tomorrow never comes. Today is the day to get serious about brain health. Today is the day to stop being in denial about what is happening to our families and our society. Today is the day to start influencing the health of those you love by living in a healthy way. If you don't make time for your brain today, you will be forced to make time for illness tomorrow. So now we come to the end. My prayer for you is that this is just the beginning of a new way to think about your brain and your mind. Success starts with a healthy brain. Failure is often the result of a brain gone wrong. The good news is that no matter how bad you've been to your brain, it is never too late to change your brain to heal your mind. May God bless you. I'm Dr. Dan Millman.